Hey there, viewers! Before we dive into this shocking story, let me ask, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments. Today's revelation comes with a chilling twist. Diddy's ex-security guard exposed something terrifying and just hours later, he was gone. This might be the most disturbing piece of the puzzle yet. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The missing man. I first saw him on a Tuesday night, though I didn't know it at the time. It was one of those cold, wet evenings where the city smelled like damp concrete and burnt coffee. The kind of night where everything felt slowed down, like the world was waiting for something to happen. I had just stepped out of a small hole-in-the-wall bar, shaking off the warmth inside, when I noticed him leaning against a lamppost across the street. Just another shadow among many, dressed in dark clothes, hood pulled low. At first, I thought he was just another junkie, or maybe someone trying to stay out of the rain. But then I noticed something odd. No phone, no cigarette, no movement, nothing. He was just watching. I wasn't in the mood for games. I turned the corner and kept walking, but not without checking over my shoulder. He followed, not too close, but not far enough to be coincidence either. Just outside of suspicion, but inside of certainty. 2 blocks down, I ducked into a bodega, pretending to browse a rack of outdated magazines. The fluorescent hum of the lights buzzed overhead, mixing with the quiet murmur of a Spanish soap opera playing on a TV behind the counter. I grabbed a bottle of water, paid the old man at the register, and stepped back outside. He was gone, but not for long. I made it back to my apartment without issue, locked the door behind me, checked the deadbolt twice, a habit I never quite grew out of. Just as I exhaled, knock, knock, knock. 3 short taps, precise, purposeful. I froze. Then another 3 knocks, this time softer. I crept toward the door, my pulse in my throat. Peering through the peephole, there he was. Same hood, same stance, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking down the hallway, like he was checking to see if someone else was watching. I should have ignored it, should have turned around and let it be someone else's problem. But that's the thing about people like me, we don't let things go. I cracked the door open, just enough. Can I help you? He didn't step forward, didn't try to push his way in. His voice was low, like he was afraid someone might be listening. You're the guy who looks into things. I said nothing. He shifted, glancing down the hall again. I need to talk about him. That got my attention. I opened the door a little wider, enough to let him in, but not enough to make it seem like an invitation. He hesitated, then stepped inside. I didn't know he worked for Diddy, not at first. Not sure how long, but he left recently. Silence on the other end. Then Marcus exhaled slowly, like someone piecing together a puzzle in real time. I think you should stop looking, he said. I clenched my jaw. So you do know him? Another long pause. Then, I didn't say that. But he had? Look, I just want to know what happened to him. Marcus shifted. I could hear the tension in his breath, the slight edge in his voice when he finally spoke. In things, he muttered. Real things. And he wasn't the type to keep quiet forever. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. What kind of things? I asked, but I never got an answer. The line went dead. I pulled the phone from my ear, staring at the screen. Call ended. No warning. No goodbye. Then the call came in. Blocked number. I hesitated for just a second before answering. I didn't speak first. I waited. The other end was silent at first, just faint static, like someone was there but wasn't saying anything. Then, a low breath. Not quite a whisper, not quite a sigh. You need to stop looking. Click. The call ended. I sat there, the silence stretching around me. And for the first time, I wondered if I had already gone too far. Chapter 3. What he saw. The voice from the blocked number still echoed in my mind. The way they had spoken, not a threat, not a warning, but a statement. You need to stop looking. It wasn't an argument, not a plea. It was something else entirely, something absolute. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my eyes scanning the street outside my apartment. Every car looked suspicious. Every shadow stretched too far. I told myself I wasn't paranoid, just cautious. But even as I tried to rationalize it, I could feel the weight of something pressing down on me. I wasn't supposed to be digging. I stared down at the list of names in my notebook. It was short, only 3 contacts left. 3 people who had been around when James was working security. The first 2 led to dead ends. One had moved out of state years ago. The other refused to speak at all. But the third? That was where things got interesting. Her name was Isabel Rouse, a former housekeeper at one of Diddy's properties. She had worked there for over a decade before suddenly quitting without notice. No public explanation, no scandal. Just gone. I managed to track down a number and called. The line rang so long I almost hung up. Then, just as I was about to end the call, she answered, "Hello." Her voice was cautious, hesitant. I kept my tone calm. "Is this Isabel?" Silence. "Who is this?" she asked, voice tight with suspicion. I took a breath. I'm trying to find out what happened to someone who used to work security at the mansion. I didn't say Diddy's name. I didn't have to. "I think you knew him." Another pause. Then she exhaled. "I don't know anything," she said quickly. "I can't help you." She was about to hang up. I could hear it in her voice. "You told him to run, didn't you?" Silence. Thick and heavy. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower. "Meet me at Street Mary's church," she muttered. "By the back lot. 15 minutes. Then she was gone. The church parking lot was nearly empty when I pulled in. A single street lamp flickered above, casting long, shifting shadows against the pavement. A few yards away, by the entrance to the side alley, a woman stood with her arms crossed, hood pulled up over her head. She looked different from what I had expected. Early 50s, tired eyes. The kind of expression that belonged to someone who had spent years carrying the weight of something they weren't meant to know. "Eden?" she asked. I nodded. "Isabel." She glanced around, making sure we were alone, then motioned for me to follow her around the back of the church. The air smelled like wet stone and candle wax. When we were finally out of sight from the street, she leaned in, lowering her voice. "I shouldn't be talking to you." I didn't respond. I just waited. She hesitated, rubbing her hands together. Then finally, she spoke. "I knew him," she said. "He was quiet, kept to himself mostly. But one night, something changed." She looked past me, as if watching something that wasn't there. "He wasn't supposed to be in that part of the house. None of us were." "What part?" I asked. "The lounge," she whispered. The way she said it sent a chill through me. "What happened there?" She swallowed, shaking her head. "I don't know. I never went inside. But I remember seeing him that night, pacing the hallway outside the door. His hands were shaking. His face was pale. He kept muttering to himself, over and over. What was he saying?" I pressed. Isabel hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I wish I didn't know. I wish I never walked into that room." A heavy silence settled between us. I felt my stomach tighten. "And you never asked him what he saw?" She shook her head. "I didn't have to. I saw it in his eyes. It was bad. Worse than bad." I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling. I had heard whispers about hidden rooms before, places where people weren't supposed to go. I had always dismissed them as exaggerations. Now, I wasn't so sure. "There has to be more," I pushed. "Something he said later, something he—" "I told you," she snapped. "I don't know, and I don't want to know." She took a step back, eyes darting around the lot. "I shouldn't have come here." Then I saw something that stopped me cold. In the corner of the lot, a black SUV. Tinted windows. Engine running. We weren't alone. I ignored it. I waited 5 minutes, then sent a text. "It's about the basement." "I know about the missing rooms." A minute passed, then another. My phone buzzed. "Come alone." Midnight. Edgewater Marina. The docks were empty when I arrived. Cold air rolled in off the water, thick with the scent of damp wood and rust. The place was quiet, except for the occasional creak of a boat shifting against its mooring. Victor was already there, leaning against an old pickup truck, smoking a cigarette. He looked like a man who had aged too fast. Deep lines around his eyes, stubble more gray than black. "You shouldn't have come," he muttered as I approached. "You told me to," I pointed out. He exhaled, flicking the cigarette onto the ground, crushing it under his boot. "I thought you'd be smarter than that." I wasn't in the mood for games. "The basement," I said. "The missing rooms. What was down there?" Victor didn't answer right away. He just stared past me, out over the water. Finally, he said, "They called it the Blue Room." I felt my pulse quicken. What was it? Victor rubbed a hand over his face. It wasn't supposed to be there. The first time I saw it, I knew something was wrong. It didn't match the rest of the house. Everything else was pristine, designed to impress. But that place, it felt different. Dark, cold, like it didn't belong. A shiver ran through me. What happened inside? Victor shook his head. I don't know everything. I only went down there once. That was enough. I took a step closer. James saw something in there. Victor let out a bitter laugh. I bet he did. I clenched my fists. Tell me what you saw. Victor hesitated. Then his voice dropped lower. It wasn't just a lounge. It was a place where people went when they needed to be reminded of who was in charge. You ever hear stories about people disappearing from the industry? One day they're on top of the world, the next they vanish. That room had something to do with it. A cold chill ran through me. Victor took another cigarette out of his pocket but didn't light it, just turned it over in his fingers, lost in thought. I remember walking in there for the first time. It wasn't just a room. It was set up for something. The lighting, the soundproofing, it was built for privacy. He looked up at me, built so that nobody outside would ever hear a thing. My stomach twisted. Who went down there? Victor let out a slow breath. The ones who mattered. I didn't like the way he said that. What happened the night you were there? Victor's jaw tightened. I was supposed to set up mix for a private recording session, some kind of spoken word thing. I got the call at the last minute, no explanation, just an address and a time. When I got there, they took me down through a separate entrance. There was a hallway. Blue lighting running along the walls like a runway leading into darkness. I could picture it. The air thick with something unspoken. The heavy silence of a place designed to keep secrets. Victor's voice grew distant, like he was remembering something he had spent years trying to forget. I was only in there for a few minutes. I didn't see much, but I heard enough. I swallowed hard. What did you hear? Victor shook his head. A voice. Someone pleading, begging. He exhaled shakily, and then nothing. Just silence. A long pause stretched between us. I felt my fingers twitch at my sides. Who was down there? Victor looked at me for a long time. Then he whispered, "You already know." A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. Victor tossed his cigarette into the water. That was the last night I ever worked there. I packed my shit and left the next day. I wanted to ask more, but I could see it in his face. He wasn't going to say anything else. He turned, walking back to his truck. "Wait," I called. He hesitated. I swallowed. What happened to James? Victor's expression darkened. Then softly he said, "He got too close." The engine of his truck rumbled to life. I watched as his taillights faded into the night. I stood there for a long time, his words echoing in my head. James had seen something in that room, something that wasn't supposed to be seen, and now I was looking for it too. Here's a refined version with the same intensity and suspense, but with smoother readability and pacing. The silence in the diner felt deafening, hammering in my ears. The last words repeated in my head like a warning. Asterisk, they already know you're looking. Asterisk, I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. The video was incomplete, but it didn't matter. James had tried to warn me. He had seen something, realized something, and for that, he had disappeared. But what had he meant? Asterisk, it's bigger than him, bigger than Diddy. Asterisk, that part didn't make sense. The world saw Diddy as the puppet master, the one pulling the strings. But if James was right, if Diddy was just another piece on the board, then asterisk, who the hell was really in control? Asterisk, the thought made my stomach turn. I shut my laptop, but I wasn't getting time to process any of this. The moment I reached for my coffee, my computer screen flickered. Lines of static flashed across the display. The fan inside whirred violently, overheating. Then, black. A second later, my phone followed. The screen blinked once. Then, without warning, it started dialing. A blocked number. I sat frozen, pulse hammering against my ribs. I hadn't touched it, hadn't pressed a single button. The call went through. I didn't answer, but I could hear it. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Someone on the other end listening. I tightened my grip on the phone, forcing myself to stay calm. Then a voice. Not a whisper this time, not a warning. Just two words. Asterisk, stop digging. Asterisk, the call cut out. I let out a shaky breath, staring at my phone like it was something infected. That wasn't just a threat. It wasn't just a warning. It was a command. I glanced back at my laptop, still black screened, still dead. The file was probably corrupted now, maybe wiped completely, but it didn't matter. I had seen enough, and now they knew I had seen it. A waitress walked over, placing the check on the table. Need anything else? I shook my head. She hesitated. Then, quieter, you okay? I forced a small nod. Yeah. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push, just walked back toward the counter. I stared at my reflection in the darkened screen of my laptop. I had a choice. Stop now, walk away, pretend none of this ever happened, or finish what James started. I thought about the SUV that had followed me, the man in the gray suit who had slipped me the note, the housekeeper, the sound engineer, the people who had vanished, and James. He had left that message for a reason, because he knew someone would come looking. Because deep down, he had known he wouldn't make it out. And now they wanted to make sure I didn't either. I stood up, tossed cash onto the table, and walked out of the diner. I wasn't stopping. Not now, because I was done being scared. And whoever was behind this, they should be too. This keeps all your tension and urgency while making it more fluid. Let me know if you want any tweaks.